Hey guys, welcome. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's awesome that you're tuning in because in this video we're going to do a top 5. And this top 5 we're going to talk about the game boxes, the ways you can just play. So we're having here on the picture, on the video, a lot of packages from China because I do a lot of these China product reviews. I'm always searching for the good stuff because there is a lot of crap out there. So join me on this adventure of packages from China and let's find the good stuff. Consider subscribing, hit the little bell, become one of the Wicked family, that would be so cool. And yeah, let's go with the show. Alright, so for the number 5 I have chosen the game box. This is just a metal edition. I really fancy this box, but in the end it's just a Pandora's box inside a box. Yup, that's the only thing it is. So this Pandora's box is a very nice one, a nice little meme machine. There are a lot of different versions out there, from Pandora Box 5, 6, DX, Pandora Game 3D, Pandora Saga 3D. The list goes on and on and on. But in the end, I wanted to talk about the idea behind it. So you have this tiny box you can basically slap on your television or monitor and play some retro games. Depends what kind of mainboard you're having, of course. Some have support for MAME, some have support for Neo Geo, and some have like even more than that, like 8-bit, 16-bit stuff. Most of them are coming with these horrible PlayStation 2 knockoff controllers. Some are chemical, some are playing decent enough to enjoy some games. Some have like this horrible game list, like one big messy list like the Sega Saga 90. That's what I mean, like you have the box, the Saga, it's one big gigantic jungle and mess out there. But now you're searching just for a way to play. So with these Pandora's boxes, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, because it's always very troubling to find the right one. So far I know now having the Pandora Game 3D is one of the best main boards. Maybe over a couple of months it will be changed. So that is something you need to take consideration with these game box Pandora's boxes. But the idea behind it, like this tiny box with some controllers, is a great way to play if you don't want to mess around with a big stick or an arcade machine. It's really fun, plug and play, no hassle whatsoever. So that's why I wanted to put it on the number 5 here in the top 5, because I think it deserves a spot, even with despite of all its problems and flaws and the horrible chemical China PlayStation 2 knockoff controllers. So, number 5, the game box or the Pandora box inside a box. Okay, for the number 4 I choose the Gamebox XS5600, and the reason why is because this Android box, basically this is an Android box, they slap some games on, dual system, you can rip out the SD card and use it like an Android box. But the reason I wanted to put this on number 4, because this thing is quite cheap. So it's even maybe cheaper than the Pandora's boxes, and therefore it has the number 4 position. What I do like about it, it comes with an AIM version, and you have a lot of different things you can play that you couldn't do with the Pandora box most of the time. It comes with, of course, the same wireless cheap plastic controllers or with the one with the wire. Because it's an Android box, you're going to get the remote. Yeah, so you can basically rip out the SD card that contains the AIM piece of software and get loose like an Android box. But most of these things are very old, having Android version number 7. I wouldn't even recommend using it anymore. But I just wanted to show you what you're going to get inside the box. And this is the same with all of these Android / game box systems. And of course, a horrible, cheap 5V, or is it a 12V? Nevertheless, doesn't matter, a horrible adapter. But mainly I like these boxes with AIM because we're having so many different systems what we haven't with the Pandora's box. Let's say if you're into the really old school stuff like Atari, Lynx, stuff you couldn't play with in Pandora's box, and it doesn't even matter which version you choose. So it does have support for Naomi and other devices, but these cheap boxes are not powerful enough to run all those, so take that in mind. They are cheap for a reason. But when it comes to, let's say, cheaper Android boxes where they are making these game boxes from, or you're going to get the Pandora's box, some of them have the option to play N64, especially with the Pandora's box on number 5. But the thing is more like with this number 4, it's a low powered box, and N64 is always like a mixed bag. It's like having a lot of poor emulation. For the two-dimensional stuff, even having like a Game Boy Advance or 16-bit, that will run just fine on this. But it's more like the higher end stuff that will not run perfectly on a box like this. But again, it's cheap, and it's a very cheap solution if you want to have something plug and play and ready to go. But if you want to play some PlayStation 1, nowadays we have a lot of great options that are not expensive that can play these games. So when it comes to these cheap boxes and PlayStation 1, it's a very nice fit. And it works very well. I find it always fascinating that they are just adding new stuff to it, like PlayStation Portable, and some games seems to be running good enough to enjoy. But I can say when you deep dive into the library of PlayStation Portable games, there are a lot of games, like with the N64, that will not run perfectly. And the same goes for Naomi. It's a mixed bag and always a little bit troubling finding the right game. So when you're picking up a cheap device like this and you want to play your favorite game, it's highly possible it doesn't even run. Okay, so here pros and cons of the main review, but in the end it's more like it's what you're paying for. And overall, 8-bit PlayStation 1 runs fine, and 2GB of RAM, it was a quite interesting piece of software slash hardware what you're going to get. So therefore I want to put it on the number 4. So for the number 3 position, I choose the Super Console X Family Android Edition. We're basically having 3 devices with the Super Console X, the Super Console X Pro and the Super Console X Stick. But when you're looking closely to the specifications, you will notice that they are mostly the same. Yeah, the other one called W, the other called the X. The chipset, when you're looking at the specs, they are coming really close to each other or basically the same. And it also includes for the software and the performance. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I have no idea what they're doing. More like they're just actually milking the freaking cow with these things. So if you call this thing a freaking Pro, give us a Pro. There's a little bit of a downside. So therefore I'm just going to call this the Super Console X Android Family. And they will basically put in the same category, number 3 position. But what are you actually going to get? So it's a little bit same like the previous model. The previous model was an even cheaper box, and with cheaper, it also comes with cheaper specs and cheaper performance. So this thing is a little bit better. It comes also with some better controllers, still like the fake PlayStation 2 chemical ones, but they are slightly better. Most of them are wireless, and if you just want to have a plug and play solution, this is just a great way to go. Therefore, on the number 3. But in the end, you're going to get the same result like with the previous box I've shown you. It's an Android box, so if you're going to plug it in your HDMI connection without the SD card, you're just going to get an Android box. But it is sadly an Android 7, a really old one, not like the Android 10 or 11. It's really old school hardware. So take that in consideration. I would not say recommend like an Android box. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm more like if you're going to get an Android device, you want to use it like actually like a plug and play machine like that, just get yourself something differently. But this is more like the game box system with EMU and all the functionality. Everything looks like, let's say, a little bit better, including the power adapter. It looks all more like high quality. We're even going to get an extension for the stick or the Super Console X stick, stuff you don't get with the cheap ones. So yeah, that's the reason also why I'm going to do it, put it a little bit higher in my list. And of course, we're going to get a nicey error mode if you are into this. So this is basically like an AIM device like the previous one too. So the functionalities or the support of different emulators is exactly the same. But because we're having more performance or slightly better, we're going to get better performance in the end. What I find a little bit bummer is if they give us like a better chipset, we could play like Atomic Wave. That doesn't work at all with the Super Console X because it's like in choppy gameplay. Dreamcast and PlayStation Portable slightly runs better, but with MAME, for example, you can't play Killer Instinct. So it's still limited in some ways, and 64 is still a mixed bag because it's more like a high demanding PC or something else that we're going to need for running those games perfectly with a good emulator. But if you're wondering why are you putting this in the number 3, it's not the same like the previous one. The reason why, because it's slightly better. Its overall quality is better, better controls, better power adapter, and of course it has a slightly better performance, and you will notice it with some games. But overall it's still problematic with some different games, like especially when it comes to Thomas Wave. I wish with the Pro they give us more like a better performance. Let's say you pay $20 up to $30 more, but you have the option to play all the games that we couldn't play with the normal. But overall, that's for, I call it like the Super Console X Android family. So we're going to put the Super Console X family, the Android editions, on the number 3 position. And in the end, it doesn't really matter what one you're going to buy. So recently I reviewed the Game Station Pro Edition. But in the end, it was just a Raspberry Pi 4. But now you're wondering, why do I put the Raspberry Pi 4 on the number 2 position? Because in my opinion, the Raspberry Pi 4 has so much potential, especially when you're using the right emulator, and maybe if you just want to tweak it a little bit, like overclocking. But in the end, if you're just using it in stock, in combination with a lot of good emulators, you have so much more to play. Yeah, because Super Console X lags, it has problems with Atomic Wave, so the games that didn't run perfectly with the Super Console X Android family, it does run with the Raspberry Pi 4. And 64, still same thing, it's like it's still a messy pile of crap. But in overall, like the performance with the Pi 4 is just way better than the Super Console X. So if you're going to grab yourself a kit like a Raspberry Pi 4, a casing, a fan, doesn't matter how you want to put it together, it's all up to you. You can choose what kind of controller with the Game Station. I think I didn't get an actual good controller, more like the Super NES version, no idea why. But if you want to play some 8-bit, 16-bit stuff, in my opinion, you don't need to have a Pi. You can play it on the cheaper box from number 4 position. Seriously, because 8-bit and 16-bit stuff will run even on your freaking phone nowadays. But the thing is more like, if you want to have a convenient thing for the high-end stuff, there we're going to need more power. Well, when I tested out PlayStation Portable with one of the latest emulators for this system, adding some frame skipping because that was needed, otherwise a lot of games were still running a lot of choppy, but then overall the performance was surprisingly good. The Pi 4 has a lot of potential and a lot of things to offer when it comes to PlayStation Portable. But don't get me wrong, PlayStation Portable, you need a really beefy PC to run everything on Full HD without frame skipping. And God of War is most of the time out of the question with these cheap devices, and even with a Pi 4 in my opinion. So with the Raspberry Pi 4, in combination with the Redream emulator, we had a possibility to run Sega Dreamcast without any hassle. A lot of games I played work very good, and I was very surprised with the performance with the Raspberry Pi 4 in combination with Dreamcast. So where a lot of these cheap boxes struggle with the higher end stuff, the Pi 4 has no problem whatsoever. So therefore I just want to put this piece of hardware on the position number 2, because it's worth it. It's a little bit more expensive to build it, because if you're going to get all of the parts like the mainboard, the casing, the power supply and the controllers, yep, it's more expensive than all the other devices. But the performance are slightly better. So Game Station or not, it doesn't even matter how you want to call this bad boy. It's more like, it's just a Raspberry Pi 4. That's it. Yep, that's the only thing that you're going to get. But what I like about the Pi 4, and the reason I just want to put it on the number 2, is that when it comes to performance and gameplay and everything, it's just way better. It's just working way better than the Super Console X, and therefore I just want to put it on the number 2. But in the end it comes more to the point, how much more money you're going to spend on the device, the better performance of course. So I've talked about a lot of different systems, and I've noticed that when you're going to get yourself a beefy PC, or you're going to get yourself a Super Console X PC Supreme, that's basically just a PC with a combination of Botashira, you're going to get so much better support when it comes to all the games. The struggles, the games that were running choppy, we don't have this issue anymore with this machine, because this is a mean little machine. So it did only come with one controller, but the controller that came with it was not like the cheap PlayStation 4 knockoffs that were quite horrible. The only thing that they're doing, like grabbing their like a random PC, or they just building it together with some old specs, because inside there is a Xenon. The Xenon CPU is comparable with a 4th generation i7, if I'm saying it correctly. In the end, it had a lot of power and this kind of a beefy mini PC. Yeah, and that's what we're going to need in the end. The price itself, it's quite high. I think it's the most expensive product that I have seen for some far that you can basically get yourself from AliExpress. But then combined with all the specs and all the things you're going to get, a 2TB hard disk, you name it, an SSD, it's just a really me machine. In combination with the specs and the things we can do with it, if it's worth the money, that is something that you need to decide for yourself. But okay, we're having a lot of great specs, because we're also paying a lot of money for this. But how is it with the support? In my opinion, when it comes to platforms, there are some limitations, like always. Because PlayStation 3 will not run on this, and Wii U, I tested it out and didn't run very well. Because with those systems, we're going to need a graphic card. The onboard one is quite good, and even up to PlayStation 2 we can play a lot of games. PlayStation Portable and 64, all the struggles that we had with the previous models, we don't have it, or most of the time we don't have them anymore. I do like it what they are going to offer us, and in the end this machine is just a crazy mean machine. But again, this is more like the thing, if you're going to slap more money on it, we're going to get better performance. Seriously, I got 1,000 of questions that does it run Killer Instinct on MAME? And I'm talking about the older stuff, like the cheap stuff. No, Pandora's box, there is almost nothing that runs it. You need to have a big, gigantic, or just a mini beefy machine like this that will run Killer Instinct. So Mortal Kombat is just a great example. Mortal Kombat 1 runs on most systems. Not like the cheap Pandora's boxes, but on most Pandora's boxes, Super Console, Android machines. But when it comes to the part 2 or part 3, the main versions are running like crap most of the time, but with the Super Console, no problem whatsoever. The same applies for Tekken Tag and MAME games that I personally never seen on a different system, because they are not even capable of running it. The same story like Killer Instinct. So PlayStation Portable runs very well on this machine. We don't have any frame skipping on, and it looks amazing. A lot of extra fancy graphical stuff that we couldn't even basically put on the Super Console X. We can put it on with the Super Console X Supreme Edition or this PC. But also a lot of systems that I didn't see before, PlayStation 2, GameCube, Wii, stuff that we didn't even have the option to, let's say, not add, because we can add them, but we couldn't play them. Dreamcast, everything works very well. It runs on Reincast if I'm saying it correctly, and maybe if you're going to get with Dream, we can even get some better performance and higher quality when it comes to the pictures. So in overall, this machine is just a freaking beast. And problems we had with N64, Cruise in the USA was a great example. With Pi 4, Super Console X, we had so much troubles, and it was a little bit of a bummer because it was also one of my favorite games I played on my N64. And it doesn't have the same issues that we've seen before. Of course, in combination with more power and the right emulator, we're going to get better performance and overall. So for the number 1 position, I choose the Supreme Machine. Super Console X is just basically a PC. You can also build it yourself if you want to. But the reason I chose this machine is simply because we're having so many different options like the Super Console X. They are just fun, cheap ways to play, especially when you're just interested in the old stuff. But if you want to have like the ultimate machine, you need to have like a bigger budget and you need to spend just more money on a bigger machine. So that's what you're going to get. This is my top 5 different systems. I want to thank you for watching. Consider subscribing, hit that little bell. If you have any questions, always leave it in the comments. I want to thank you for watching again, and I will see you in the next video. It will be cool.